What has happened, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review the new Marvel flick Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which is now in wide release, but I'll avoid all spoilers initially, and I'll give you a fair warning before discussing any plot-specific details, just in case some people out there are still on the fence about whether or not they're going to go see this flick in the theater. But I will give you one spoiler. I'm going to recommend that you save your money, because apart from a few highlights in this flick, like the performance by Jonathan Majors, which really caught me off guard in terms of just how effective it was. But the movie on the whole, I'm not going to say it's the worst Marvel movie, but it's definitely in the conversation. And if people want to say it's the worst Marvel movie, fire away. I mean, I'm not going to defend Quantumania. And I guess I'll just skip ahead to my main source of aggravation, or my main grievance, and that is the screenplay by Jeff Loveness. If there's a bad guy in this equation, somebody who is the Achilles heel of this flick, who just makes so much of it completely, utterly suck. He is the only screenwriter who got credit on this flick, so the blame falls on his shoulders, maybe partially director Peyton Reed, who should have known better. But I'm not the first person to point this out, but Marvel really has to stop hiring writers from Rick and Morty to work on Marvel. And I love Rick and Morty. Some of those episodes have made me like roll off the couch, howling and crying with laughter. But goddamn, Jeff Loveness is a terrible fit for Marvel, and the humor that he injects into this, you're just like, oh, like, dude, like, it's not even remotely funny. It's like, it's painful to listen to, and it just feels pathetic, and it feels desperate. And so much of this movie seems to be trying to capture the flavor of Guardians of the Galaxy, but instead of going into outer space, going into inner space, going to a very small quantum realm. But it has all these civilizations and wild characters and that sort of thing, and it all just feels inert. It all feels generic. It all feels predictable and boring. And by the end, the action is so muddy and so chaotic, and you're following all these characters and their big action beats where you do not give a fuck about what they're doing. Contrast to that to the end of Endgame, where every single character beat in that action is like, oh my god, I can't believe that person just did that, or oh my god, I can't believe that person just did that, where you're cheering for every hero beat. You won't be cheering for Ant-Man and the Wasp, but it's not the fault of the actors. I feel like the actors gave it their all. Paul Rudd, he's the heavyweight champ of effortless charm. He's probably the most likable person in the entire fucking entertainment industry. And he's doing everything he can to sell this flick, and Scott Lang remains a very endearing character. And of course, I love seeing people like Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas and even Bill Murray appearing in this. I mean, these are actors that I've been watching in movies quite literally my entire life. I mean, I saw Romancing the Stone with Michael Douglas in the theater before I even knew who the hell Michael Douglas was. And Bill Murray, I grew up on friggin' Stripes and Meatballs and Ghostbusters. And Michelle Pfeiffer, you want to talk about childhood crushes in the 80s and even now. One of the most beautiful women I've ever laid eyes on. She is striking in appearance to the present day. So I love seeing all of them get a big fat paycheck. But there's no getting around the fact that so much of this movie just doesn't work. In particular, during the first half before Kang shows up, I'd read some reviews where people were saying that the movie's going great until the second half. I'm actually going to go with the opposite, because at least you have that rare thing in Marvel during the second half to enjoy. A charismatic villain. And even if you're the most diehard Marvel fanatic of all time, going back to 2008, where you've never seen a Marvel movie that you don't like, even those Marvel fans will concede that some of the Marvel villains have been a little lackluster and lacking in personality and a little boring. Kang is fascinating, and you can almost see Jonathan Majors, he's very strong physically, but you can just see him like through sheer force of will and power and talent, just trying to make Kang the Conqueror into an interesting character, no matter what dog shit is taking place in the movie or unfolding around him. He is fascinating, and that actually caught me off guard, because I was in that rare minority where I didn't like the show Loki. In particular, the portrayal of Kang in the final episode, where he just seemed too silly and too stupid, and just his direction and the notes that they were hitting all just seemed off. He is fucking awesome in this, and I genuinely, sincerely look forward to any future appearances by Kang, because it's been way too long. I mean, Marvel has had a handful of good villains like Loki and Thanos, but we can start talking about Kang the Conqueror in that conversation. But in spite of all these harsh things that I'm saying, there's a part of me that is still loyal to Marvel, because from 1979 through like 2016, I read many, many, many thousands of Marvel comics. I've got Marvel flowing through my DNA, my bones, and every blood vessel in my body. Part of me always wants to see Marvel do well, and I will admit, even though I've already seen the trailer a few times, when the trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 played before the movie, I was like, I'm getting emotional. I'm getting chills just watching this. But it's increasingly rare to have that emotional response to Marvel content where it just feels like quantity over quality is ruling the day. And I know that there have been a couple of announcements recently over at Disney through Bob Iger and Kevin Feige about how they're going to take their foot off the gas pedal and try and get things right. And we'll see. But right now, everything at Disney just feels oversaturated, at least oversaturated with poor entries or poorly managed. Whether you're talking about, like, they have their three marquee franchises, Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars. And every once in a while, something cool will emerge under one of those umbrellas. But they're the exception as opposed to the rule. And it's interesting seeing this movie getting beaten up on Rotten Tomatoes. And it feels like we're finally entering a period, or we're entering new terrain where it's possible that a Marvel movie could flop and flop hard. I don't think this movie will flop. It'll probably underperform. But the Marvels is going to be a very interesting test case this summer. And I'm sure all the usual culture war battles will rage around that movie. But in the end, all the Disney cares about is ticket sales and positive reviews. And yeah, I'll be waiting with bated breath to see what the future might hold. Because from 2008 to 2019, good, bad, or mediocre, every Marvel fan would watch every single Marvel entry because you felt like you had to be able to get the maximum emotional impact from all the various twists and turns in the most popular movie franchise ever conceived by human beings. But now we're entering an era where I watch all the movies, but I pick and choose which shows I want to watch. And the moment people start picking and choosing which shows and movies they want to watch, well, then the whole kind of, the whole spell that they've been casting over us for 15 years starts to come unraveled. And I just checked the running time on this movie on IMDb. It's only 2 hours and 5 minutes, relatively short by most kind of Disney feature film standards. It felt twice that long. I'm shocked and amazed it was only 2 hours and 5 minutes. And I'm sure plenty of journalists and analysts out there are going to dust off all their old articles about superhero fatigue and say, this time it's real. People are feeling superhero fatigue. And I think superhero fatigue does not exist. People just have shitty movie fatigue. And if a brand or a series has enough shitty entries, people will stay home or they'll watch something else. But it'll be interesting to see which writers and which voices and which commentators that kind of help build up Marvel from 2008 to 2019, how they'll be the exact same voices that tear things down. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see to what degree the Disney empire can remain intact, because they laid off like 7,000 people recently. Bob Iger's really trying to, position Disney for the future. Maybe they'll sell off Hulu, maybe they won't. But if they can't get Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars in order, one of their main sources of revenue, obviously they have entertainment, they've got their theme parks, they've got ESPN, they got a lot of different things going on. But they've got to get their house in order when it comes to Marvel, or people will rediscover their love of DC, or they'll just play video games, or they'll watch mixed martial arts, or they'll watch porn. They might even go outside and do something. They might go play some stickball with their friends. But yeah, if the movies start to suck, guess what? This whole 15-year phenomenon will come to an end that will be truly glorious to behold as we watch Rome burn down, so to speak. But let's start getting into some more specificity about what didn't work in this flick. So if you don't want any spoilers of any kind, now is the time to bail out, because I do have to call attention to a few specific details. So let's get back to my favorite punching bag on this flick, the screenwriter Jeff Loveness. He needs to be fired from all future Marvel projects. I don't know if he's been pitching other ideas or getting roped in for, writers' rooms or spitballing sessions or whatever the case might be. But I think this is a strong contender for the worst screenplay of all the Marvel movies. And that's saying something, because there have been a few Marvel movies that have been, I guess, less than ideal from a writing perspective. And if you want an example of his shortcomings as a writer, let's look at his characterization of the character Cassie, a character where after a couple of movies, people are starting to like her, and obviously her character will be a huge part of any future Young Avengers shows or movies. Her character stature in the comics definitely has a lot of fans. But the way he writes her, like in the first third of the movie, makes her intensely unlikable. Like, there are plenty of movies and shows out there that depict children as complete and total entitled, spoiled brats. But it almost seems like this movie's going out of its way to make her unlikable, where all she does for like the first 30 minutes is talk shit about her dad's accomplishments. And I'm sorry, no matter what daddy issues she might have, Scott Lang played a role in saving the fucking universe. I'm sorry, at a certain point, once you've played a role in saving the universe, you get a pass on all other shortcomings that you might have. And her attitude basically is, well, you might have saved the universe from Thanos, but what have you done for me lately? Like, you weren't down at the park for my nonviolent protest against the police force in San Francisco. I mean, it is completely, totally absurd how this movie is trying to set up the character of Scott Lang as the negligent father or the bad guy. It's not like he opted into going into the quantum realm beforehand. He went in, and the people that were going to bring him out, they disintegrated. It's like, yeah, cut your dad a little bit of slack. So right from the word go, you have a situation where Scott Lang wants to do everything in his power to make sure that his relationship with his daughter is everything that it could be or should be, and she is just acting like the world's biggest bitch. So the movie gets off on the wrong foot from the word go. And the other major Achilles heel in this movie is bringing back Corey Stoll as MODOK. And I liked him in the first Ant-Man movie and thought he did a good job. He's a really talented actor, and he's done a lot of great work over the last 10 or 15 years. But the same way that Jeff Loveness should be fired or banned from all future projects, any and all special effects artists who worked on MODOK in this film, I mean, they just need to be sent to the corner of the classroom to wear the dunce hat. It's a strong contender for the worst special effects that I've ever seen in a movie from any era. With no matter what technology you're talking about, I could not believe that somebody would look at that depiction of the character on the screen, whether he's wearing his faceplate or not, and say, you know what, that's good to go. We can put that special effect on several thousand screens. But also they turned MODOK into this, I don't know, kind of inadvertently tragicomic figure who we're meant to kind of laugh at and occasionally cheer for, but I thought he was totally ridiculous. And the way Jack Kirby first invented that character and depicted him in the 60s, he was freaky and he was cool. I can remember as a little kid reading a comic where Hulk and I believe Kazar teamed up and they were fighting MODOK, and I just thought the character was absolutely fucking terrifying. Admittedly, I was like 5, but still, it was a really cool character. But there were several scenes involving this character, well, actually just a lot of scenes in general during the first half, where I seriously thought about getting out of my chair and just leaving. And the only Marvel movie that I never finished was Black Widow. I just thought it was so boring. And I couldn't believe what I was watching. I was like, you know what? Moving on with my life. Life is short, and movies and shows can be long when they suck. And I could feel my butt rising out of my seat a few times during the first half. But then luckily, Jonathan Majors showed up, and I was like, you know what? He's given this movie his all. I will stick around and watch him in action. And also for a movie that's so unintentionally stupid and attempting to be funny throughout the majority of it, when Kang is in action and using his body armor and using his his helmet or his visor or his faceplate, he looks like fucking Kang. Like, he looked badass. And in a movie that's totally lacking in any real badass qualities, it was a breath of fresh air to have a real badass character mowing people down. And as far as the rest of the characters are concerned, you can tell they're just kind of sitting around asking out loud, who do I need to fuck to get off of this movie? And Michael Douglas seems utterly perplexed and bewildered as to why he's even in this movie, except for this really stupid line that they just insert at random about 2/3 of the way through, where he starts giving this random bit of as advertising or propaganda on behalf of socialism. I was like, oh my God, what are we doing here? And then Bill Murray, he looked equally perplexed. It was almost like, you're paying me how much money to say what and what movie? I mean, once again, I'm thrilled to see Bill Murray and Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas getting massive paychecks to do this stuff. But Michelle Pfeiffer, she's given lots to do in this. She has tons of screen time. And I love Michelle Pfeiffer. But in spite of how busy her character is, she doesn't really do anything that consequential or substantial. Like, none of it's particularly interesting or engaging. And by the end of the movie, I was just like, please just end already. And I've joked in the past about how with a lot of Marvel movies, or even like the Sony Spider-Man movies and that sort of thing, that the only real reason people go to see these movies is to watch the post-credit scenes and, you know, what teases of the future they might contain. The moment this movie ended, I was fucking out. It's like, you know what? I will look up the post-credit scenes on my phone. I do not give a shit. So once again, if you're asking yourself if over the next couple of days you should spend time and money going to see this, I would say no. Like, life is short. There are other things to do with your time. If the movie fucking ruled, I mean, I want the movie business to thrive. I want theatrical exhibition to thrive. But if the movies suck balls, there's absolutely no reason why you should not do something else with your time. And after Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 comes out in May, there's honestly nothing left on the Marvel slate that I'm looking forward to. Not that I don't like the Fantastic Four, not that I don't like X-Men or Deadpool or any of these characters. It's the lack of interesting, compelling filmmakers that fills me with unease, because slowly but surely, all the best directors that help make Marvel what it is, they're gone. I mean, look, like Jon Favreau and Joss Whedon and the Russo brothers and now James Gunn, like, they're all drifting away to other projects. And Kevin Feige needs to make a pronounced effort to bring in the best and brightest filmmakers out there. Like the leftover writing stuff from Rick and Morty, they're not going to cut it. But I think I've said enough horrible things about this at this point, and it feels weird bashing this movie when you have so many talented performers doing everything in their power to make the best movie possible, but they were failed by the writer, they were failed by the director, and they were failed by Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige clearly is overextended. His resources have been stretched far too thin. He needs to make fewer movies and fewer shows and really focus on getting them right, or this whole franchise is going to come to an ignominious end. But before I wrap things up, I do need to bring you a little breaking news from Manscaped, the official sponsor of my podcast, Wrong Reel. Because Manscaped now sells beard products. That's right, they're once again revolutionizing men's grooming with the brand new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. From a beard trim to a fresh shave, the technology behind the Beard Hedger Pro Kit allows you to shape your signature beard look. Now you can finally use Manscaped products to make your drapes match your carpet by going to manscaped.com and using the discount code WRONGREEL in all caps for 20% off and free shipping. And for people who don't know what that expression means about your drapes matching your carpet, look it up. So join the 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and check out the Performance Package 4.0. And remember that a grooming routine is not complete without applying Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver before showing off your brand new self. These unique formulations take care of the smelliest part of your body and are a big boost to your confidence. And to complete the set, Manscaped includes their Shed Travel Bag and Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs as free gifts to keep all your goodies stored comfortably. So if you like this channel or my podcast, please consider making a purchase to support my various commentary endeavors, or at a minimum, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, like the video, you know the drill, and hunt me down on Twitter at Geeking Out. But thanks so much for watching my video. Let me know what you think of the flick in the comments below, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.